This is Ray. It is, I think it's the 25th or the 26th. So I just went over, I've been following the Akitu or the AkiTi, which is the Sumerian, Babylonian, Mesopotamian festival of the return of the sun of the new year. It starts with Marduk, and then on the 4th to the 6 days, which is what I'm on now. I was reading, and it sort of clicked in, right? Because I know that Egypt and Sumer, or Babylon, more so Kemet and Sumer, were sister countries, right? And so a lot of the lore is the same, but it's not apparent on the surface. The names are different, right? Like, perfect example, in Sumer, Inanna is the moon, and Ishtar is Venus. But then eventually they were merged together. So Inanna was the daughter, or was the moon goddess, and in Babylon, Ishtar was Venus. But then what they did was later on they merged Inanna and Ishtar together, so she became like the daughter of the moon, but also a starry Venus. Well, we know that Aset is also the it's the same archetype. It's she is the she's Venus. She's represented Venus, but also of some other signs, but of Venus. And you also see her with the crescent moon on her head, and either a full moon or a sun inside of the crescent on her crown, right? So it kind of brings that she is the moon as well, right? So as I'm reading in the Joshua Free's Babylonian magic book, when it comes down to this the solar celebration, I'm at a portion where Marduk he's dead, and they say that he is buried in the mountain or in the pyramid. Now, the pyramid, that's a big thing. It's a big word to be using, considering mountain and pyramid usually don't go together. But in Egypt, and also in the old days, the mound or the mountain represented something. It was the rising up of the land, right? So the land rising up had some energy in it, right? And the pyramid itself, well, we know that the pyramid in Kemet is the Giza, right? And we know that's not a burial tomb. It's actually some sort of device used to interact with the atmosphere, and change the frequency, change the energy of the things around it, right? So if Marduk was killed, right? And this is important. The reason he was killed or murdered, or not murdered, but killed, at least it says he's sleeping. So he's dead, but he's alive and he's dreaming, right? So basically he's meditating, right? Or just he's in the underworld or something like that, right? And the reason, this is the most important part, the reason why he is dead is because he killed the husband of Inanna Ishtar, which is Dumuzi. Now, we know that Inanna Ishtar is Aset, right? So if Aset is Inanna Ishtar, Dumuzi must be Osiris, correct? Correct. Okay. So in order to confirm this, we have to look at the lore a little bit more, right? So on these particular days of the ritual, it's like days 4 to 6, I believe, or 3 to 6 or something. It talks about how Marduk is in the temple or in the pyramid sleeping but dreaming, right? And then begins the descent of Inanna Ishtar, or the descent of Ishtar, right? And that's where the story comes in, of how Ishtar descended from heaven above and went below into the underworld. And this is also indicative of Aset looking for Osiris in the underworld, right? Or looking for him in various places, right? So Inanna, or Ishtar, descends. She goes to meet her sister, her older sister, which gives some hint that this older sister has been around longer, so this energy has been around a little bit longer. But Inanna, Ishtar descends, and then she goes to see Ereshkigal, which is her sister in the underworld, right? So eventually, make a long story short, you can read the rest of The Descent of Ishtar in the Babylonian book, the Necronomicon. But essentially what happens is Ereshkigal is totally upset with Ishtar, and basically she strips her of all her 7 decrees, or her 7 divine what is it, tools, right? The lapis lazuli wand, the necklace, the breastplate, the crown. All these things that she set upon herself to make herself the queen of heaven have been stripped of her, and this is symbolic as well, right? And then she's killed. She's put upon the cross for birds and other things to come eat and peck at, right? And this happens for 3 days. She is dead upon the cross, right? And this is where the story comes in of Ishtar and springtime, and basically the rebirth, the whole Jesus thing, because Ishtar died on the cross for 3 days and then was reborn. Well, the same thing kind of happened with Osiris, remember? He was dead and he was reborn. He stayed in the underworld, right? Okay, so if we look at this scenario, right, we can see that Inanna Ishtar is also a Set. We know that Dumuzi, in this particular tale, Dumuzi is actually killed because he, it's a silly story, but when he thought Ishtar was dead, he went and had relations with other women. And so when Ishtar came back, when she was reborn, because Enki lifted her, brought her back to life using her Ninchabar, her guardian angel, she was brought back to life, and she found out Dumuzi did this, right? So she's totally upset. And then there's a part of the story where it says he's killed, but then he's brought back. But the deal is half of the year he has to stay in the underworld with Ereshkigal and Nengal, and the other half of the year he can spend with Inanna Ishtar, or with Ishtar, right? And this is sort of symbolic of, like I said, Osiris, right? But with that in mind, if we're comparing Kemet to Sumer or Babylonian, right, then who is Ereshkigal and who is Nengal? Ereshkigal is the queen of the underworld. Nengal is the king of the underworld, right? I believe that those names are right. I might have the Nengal part wrong, but I'll go back and check. But in the story of Aset and Asar, or Isis and Osiris, there are other entities involved in this, right? So basically, who kills Osiris? Right? It's Set, his brother, right? His brother. And we know all the gods are like sort of brothers or sisters or consorts, right? So Set kills Osiris. And Set also has a wife. His wife is Nephthys, right? And Nephthys is the queen of the underworld. So I'm seeing the relation here is what happened in Sumer was one side of the story, and what happened in Sumer and Babylon and Mesopotamia was one side of the story, and the Egyptians, or the ancient Kemetians, they changed it a little bit, right? And so then Ishtar's Aset, and Dumuzi is Asar, Ereshkigal is Nephthys, and Nengal is Set, right? Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. The reason why I'm really going over this is because we have learned that there was something they were using the pyramid for. It was not a tomb. There were no dead bodies placed there, right? It was not a king's tomb. The pyramid was actually built before the actual Egyptians settled there, because they don't know who built it. There's no hieroglyphs or any markings on it that are symbolic of the rest of the temples and buildings there in Kemet, right? Well, if you cross-reference the book of Thoth the Atlantean, Thoth mentions, after leaving Atlantis, coming to Kemet and going under the Great Pyramid in order to bathe under the flower of life, right? This is where he went, and he was able to live from life unto life unto life unto life, right? Okay, so we also know the pyramid was being used to generate some sort of electrical energy to interact with the atmosphere, right? So it's under my assumption, I'm believing that the either the Atlanteans or the Sumerians built the pyramids, right? Okay, so anyways, so we know in Accession lore, right, that at some point, Kemet was started, right? The gods walked there, and the whole culture started to flourish, right? We also know in Babylon, right? We know that Marduk and Inanna Ishtar had an issue after Marduk killed Dumuzi. Ishtar and Marduk had an issue, right? And so we know they left the Ishtar, the witches of Ishtar, and the worshippers of Ishtar. They left, right? They went over into Kemet. So we know that's kind of when Kemet kind of got propped up, is when this political faction this spiritual political faction in Babylon, Mesopotamia, started, right? The moment they usurped the rule of Enlil, right, with Marduk. Because you have to go back and read it, because Marduk is not supposed to be the god of gods. Enlil is, but due to political, spiritual manipulation back then, the kings wanted power instead of the priests having power. And so they ascended Marduk as a lesser god to a major god, and then decreed that he could pass that nobility of reign on to the kings. And that's why they rose Marduk, is to be able to give the kings legitimate rule and reign over the priesthood, right? Over everything, not just the priesthood, but to take the power from the priesthood, right? But they still needed the priesthood in order to do the rituals, and because everybody still believed in those priests, and also the priests and the priestess, and they were also doing the great work. They were generating the energy. They were still in contact with the Anunnaki, right? Or the spiritual energy of the gods, right? So we know that the Ishtarians, or what do you want to call them, left and went to Kemet, right? Okay, so Marduk is put inside the temple, or the pyramid, or the mountain, right? So we also know that Marduk was also Amun-Ra, or Amun-Re in Kemet. Or Re, I can't remember which it was. It was either Amun, I think it was Amun-Re, because Amun means hidden, and Re would be light, and that would mean the hidden light, right? And since Marduk was dead and dreaming, or sleeping and dreaming in the pyramid or the mountain, Amun-Re, that energy, is supposed to be representative of the Marduk energy. That's at least what I'm thinking. So anyways, this is more so lore for Accessions, but it has some historical and some pertinent other facts there as well. And that's kind of what I just saw. I was doing some morning work, and then I kind of just wanted to jot this down because I think it's some great information to sort of correlate as I'm doing some work. So I'll add on to this later. Okay, all right, bye.